a valuation soaring into the hundreds of billions, talk of the biggest IPO in history. Headlines keep buzzing that SpaceX is about to go public and change the market forever. But the reality is far more complicated. A traditional IPO for all of SpaceX probably isn't happening anytime soon, and those massive valuation numbers are hiding a much more interesting story about what the company is really building. Let's break it down. 1 minute you read about a private sale valuing the company at $400 billion. The next, it's a rumored $800 billion. It's confusing, and that's partly by design. So how do you separate signal from noise? In this video, we'll cover 3 things you're not being told about the SpaceX IPO buzz. What IPO actually means here, where those valuations really come from, and the real story investors are betting on. Here's the first thing to understand. When the media says SpaceX IPO, they're usually blending together several very different financial events. For years, the plan was for SpaceX to stay private indefinitely. Both Elon Musk and President Gwynne Shotwell have voiced real reservations about going public. The stock market runs on quarterly results, but SpaceX's mission runs on a timeline of decades. Public shareholder pressure could easily choke long-term cash-hungry projects like Starship and Mars. So what's generating all the noise? First, the tender offer. This is not an IPO. It's a private, controlled event where existing shareholders, employees, early backers get to sell some shares. SpaceX runs these periodically to give its team liquidity without going public, and each one tends to set a new, higher valuation. Reports from late 2025 pointed to a tender offer targeting roughly $800 billion, a huge jump from earlier numbers. The public often mistakes these for IPO steps, but they're really internal liquidity events. Second, the Starlink spin-off rumor. This one's more credible and has persisted for years. Musk has said Starlink will likely go public eventually, but only once its revenue and cash flow are smooth and predictable. That makes sense. Starlink is a recurring revenue subscription business, far easier for Wall Street to value than high-risk rocket development. Spinning it off would let SpaceX raise enormous capital for Starship while keeping the core aerospace company private and insulated from market pressure. So when you hear SpaceX IPO, it's often really code for a possible future Starlink IPO, not something imminent. The IPO story is really a mix of private tender offers and the long-standing possibility of a Starlink spin-off, a strategic navigation of private markets, not a straightforward public offering. So where do the eye-popping numbers come from? You're not buying the company as it exists today. You're buying a bet on its dominance of multiple world-changing industries in the future. The valuation breaks into 3 pillars. The launch business. This is the foundation. Reusable Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets fundamentally change the cost of reaching space. SpaceX now launches over 80% of the world's mass to orbit. It's a reliable cash-generating engine fed by commercial satellite deployments and government contracts with NASA and the Department of Defense. Fantastic business. But on its own, it doesn't justify these sky-high valuations. It's the bedrock, not the skyscraper. Starlink, the real driver of the hype. By mid-2026, the service was projected to have over 7 million subscribers, with some estimates as high as 12 million, and it reportedly turned free cash flow positive in 2024. 2025 revenue projections put Starlink around $11.8 billion, the majority of SpaceX's total revenue. It's the predictable, scalable subscription model Wall Street loves, and the ambition goes beyond rural internet. SpaceX is pushing into direct-to-cell service, aiming to compete with the likes of Verizon and AT&T. Starlink isn't just an ISP, it's a bid to become the planet's dominant telecom infrastructure. This is where most of the valuation story comes from. The Future Premium, built almost entirely on Starship. This super heavy-lift, fully reusable rocket is designed to carry up to 100 people and massive cargo to orbit, the Moon, and eventually Mars. Its success unlocks everything else, deploying next-gen Starlink satellites at scale and enabling the Mars and lunar ambitions Musk talks about constantly. It promises to cut the cost of lifting mass to orbit by another order of magnitude. It's the highest risk, highest reward bet in the mix, unproven but transformative enough that investors bake in a massive premium for it. There's even a speculative fourth layer, AI. Musk's other venture, XAI, has floated synergies with SpaceX, including orbital AI data centers powered by unlimited solar energy. No confirmed merger, but it adds another sci-fi layer to the long-term story, so the valuation isn't profit today. It's a narrative built from a stable launch business, hyper-growth at Starlink, and the world-changing potential of Starship, with a dash of AI ambition on top. So what's the real truth behind the buzz? The SpaceX IPO narrative is less about one financial event and more about a company managing perception while raising the colossal sums needed to fund its ambitions. The buzz itself is a strategic asset. Talk of record valuations, private or public, helps attract and retain elite engineering talent paid in private stock. It strengthens SpaceX's leverage with massive enterprise and government customers, and it creates a sense of momentum that matters enormously when your stated goal is colonizing another planet. The valuation isn't measuring today's profits, it's a forward-looking price tag on a potential future monopoly. Investors are betting that vertical integration lets SpaceX own the rails of the low Earth orbit economy, cheapest launch, dominant global internet, and the future of heavy lift logistics, all under one roof. That also explains the spending. SpaceX is running a sacrifice the quarter, build the empire playbook, burning cash at a historic rate to build a technological lead so wide no competitor can cross it. If Starlink or the broader company ever does go public, understand what you'd actually be buying. Not a stable industrial company, but a high-risk venture-style bet on the future. The numbers to watch aren't daily stock speculation, they're the milestones: Starship reaching orbit and proving reusable, Starlink's subscriber count climbing. Those determine whether the hype becomes reality. Let's wrap it up. First, the SpaceX IPO isn't one simple event. It's private stock sales for employees plus persistent, credible Starlink spin-off rumors, while the core company protects its long-term vision. Second, the massive valuation is a bet on future dominance, not current earnings, built on the launch business, Starlink's growth, and Starship's potential. Third, the real story is funding an empire. The headlines are a tool for momentum and capital, not a countdown to a stock ticker. The question isn't if SpaceX needs more money, it will. It's whether that comes from finally taking Starlink public or continuing to raise it privately while shielding R&D from public scrutiny. Watch Starship's next flight, Starlink's subscriber growth and reusability progress. That's where the real answer is being written.